Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Adobe XD Masterclass. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this Friday afternoon. We've made it through another week of 2021. Hope you're all doing well. If you are tuning in live on Behance this afternoon, evening, or morning, let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've got Cody and Laura, Chris, Umacorn, Sydney. Who else do we have? We have Brett and Ness, Wade. Paul Tranny is in the house. He just wrapped up the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge, and I believe he had a masterclass this morning as well. Ruchika, if I mispronounce anyone's name, I do apologize. Andre, great to see everyone. If you're tuning in live on YouTube, head on over to behance.net/Adobe Live so I can see all of your faces and we can chat and have a great time over the next hour for this masterclass. I think I'm losing my voice already. Brett from Hamilton, Ontario. I grew up not too far from there. Andre from Iceland. Ooh, one day I'm gonna make it out there. Umacorn from Netherlands. Bao from Minnesota. Haven't been there either. We do have an office in Minnesota, I believe. Got someone else from Minnesota. Andres from Germany. Anita from Toronto. Enzi from Nigeria. And Christina from Texas. Enes from Turkey. I love this. There's people from all over the world. Eventually, at some point in the future, possibly, we will have people tuning in from other planets. Possibly the moon. The moon's not a planet. It's not, but, you know, who knows? Mars. There might be a little bit of a delay, though. You know, there's a 15-second delay now. There's probably going to be a 14-minute delay if people are on Mars. I don't know. Anyways, let me hop over to my screen and let's get this party started. So, Adobe XD Masterclass number 41. We've been doing this for 41 weeks, and many of you in the chat I recognize who have been here since week number 1 of these masterclasses. That is insane. We've been doing this for almost an entire year. So thank you to everyone who has been tuning in. So before we dive into today's topic and designs, I do want to remind you that I'm also running the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. I'm going to be hosting it in just a few hours at 2 o'clock Pacific time. Christine also from Hamilton, Ontario. It's like all of Canada is here watching me right now. Thank you, Canada. I can't wait to travel back home to Toronto at some point in the hopefully near future, but probably not. All right, so Daily Creative Challenge. This is not that stream, but if you are interested in XD, if you're brand new, it's a great way of learning something new. So in about 2 hours, possibly, something like that, I'm going to be hosting the Daily Creative Challenge, so come back for that. And then after me right now is going to be Kyle T. Webster with an illustration masterclass. Very talented guy, so check that out as well. And kind of bouncing off of that Daily Creative Challenge, but also it could be standalone, is I'm uploading videos, separate videos, more polished videos on all the topics that I cover during this Daily Creative Challenge that I'm hosting in about 2 hours. So if you want, and today's video was design an emoji picker, which is really fun. So if you have time, youtube.com/Howard Pinsky, you can watch those videos in addition to the live stream. Alrighty then, so let's hop over to, if I can find it, boop, there we go, Adobe XD. So over the last 2 masterclasses, we've been building out this web service for a manga or comic inspired landing page. And it's kind of snowballed into something a little bit more. And I know many of you wanted to see a little bit more pages for this experience, and that's what we're going to do today. This will be the last masterclass, most likely, covering this particular topic. We're going to move on to something else after this, but I've been having a lot of fun building out these various pages, creating some interactions using components and states. But there's more that I want to cover. So we're going to do that today. So very quick recap of what we've done so far. This is what we started with. We have this fun looking landing page with various sections. We have this logo at the top. We have this is kind of floating all over the place. Let me move this over. There we go. We've got some links in this area, a search box, user profile, which we might turn that into a drop down at some point with hover. We have some tags up here, and I believe we used, was a repeat grid, or yeah, we used a repeat grid. You can also use stacks as well. We have this banner up here. And what's cool is last masterclass, we started to use stacks and padding to really bring this thing to life. So that if we did make this larger, for example, all the content below it moves as you'd expect. And of course you can dive in here, move things around if you need to, swap the position of this, right? We had a good time. So if you missed those 2 masterclasses, you can go back, rewatch them. And we also we're going to be covering this as well today, but how to create hover effects in repeat grids and stacks. That was a lot of fun. All right. And then last masterclass, we took a look at building out this page, which is more of the details of this particular comic book. We used components, we used stacks, the whole 9 yards. And then I added this a little bit later. But today what I want to start to do is build out maybe a pricing page or a subscription page. This particular service, it might have some sort of a premium membership where you can subscribe, you get unlimited access, for a certain amount per month. And we want to build out what that page looks like. Now, to help us in that process, we can either duplicate one of these existing pages, or we can create a new artboard. Now, since that page is going to be pretty different, we're probably going to go ahead and build out a new artboard. So I'm going to grab my artboard tool, shortcut key A, and if I click, it's going to create the last artboard that I used somewhere else, which isn't what I need here. So right down over here to the right-hand side in this properties inspector, I'm going to choose the 1920 by 1080 pixel artboard, and we are going to get going. Now, to help me out in this process, what I should have probably done also, now that I'm thinking about it, delete that, is turn this whole navigation bar at the top into a component. That way, if I'm using it on multiple artboards like I am doing or will be doing, if I update one of them, they'll update everywhere else. So with this whole navigation bar, I'm going to delete this. So I have the whole navigation bar selected. I'm going to make sure to name some of these layers. Search, we've got our links, and we have our user circle. Perfect. So I have the navigation bar selected. At the top right-hand corner of my properties inspector, I can go ahead and create a new component. Or I can also do that in my libraries. I can press the plus button beside component. Completely up to you. There we go. Now I have my default state. So I can go ahead and copy this, hop over to this artboard, paste it. What you can also do is you can select multiple artboards at once and paste. And it pastes in the exact same location on all of your artboards, which is wonderful, right? Let me go ahead and make sure this is centered. It was not centered. Bad, Howard. There we go. Oops, what did I do? I lost something. There we go. Okay, so we've got our new artboard complete. Now, because this particular landing page is more of a marketing experience, and it really wants to showcase the premium membership of this service, we might want to go in a bit of a different direction. Maybe we want like half dark mode or all dark mode, for example. So I could start by selecting the artboard and dropping the color to something like this. Now there are a few problems, right? The navigation bar at the top wasn't designed for dark mode, so we'll have to make some changes to that. And 2, we may not want the entire landing page dark because it's a drastic difference from the rest of the website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, draw one out across this artboard like this, and to give it a little bit of style, I'm going to drop this color to a nice, almost pure black. And then I might want to give it a bit of an angle. So I'm going to double click into this to convert it into a path. And I'm simply going to grab this point on the left-hand side and drag it on down, just to give this page a bit of an angle. It'll be fun, right? Now I can pop this behind the navigation bar and call this background. Now, again, our navigation bar originally was not designed for dark mode. So there are a few things that we can do. We can either dive into this particular instance of the main component, and you know it's an instance because we have the hollow diamond at the top left-hand corner. We can do that. Or what we can do, and what I would prefer, is going to the main component and creating a new state specifically for a darker experience. Now, if you don't know where that main component is, or it's not present on any of your artboards, you can right-click, and edit main component. I lost it for a second. So it's going to take me right here. Now, what I want to do here is in the properties inspector, I'm going to press the plus button beside the default state and create a new state. And this will be called, I'll just call this dark. And by the way, if anyone has questions about XD or anything really, throw it in the chat. I am taking a peek over from time to time. All right, so we have this here. Now, if I were to dive in here and start making changes to these links, we're going to kind of lose them because we're changing the link to a white text on a white background. So just for now, I'm going to just drag out a darker background, just like that, and just pop it behind this navigation bar just so I can see what I'm working with. We're going to get rid of that background in just a second. But this will allow me to dive in here and change these to white, change these to white, change the border to white, right? And we can play around with the opacity if we need to as well. Bump that up a little bit. Maybe the icon, will bump that up. This user icon on the left or the right, you know, the red kind of works against the black background, but at the same time, it's a little bit, right? Something about it just doesn't work for me. So I'm gonna change that to white as well. Now over here, I'm gonna make sure that these links are 100%. They might be, they may not be, they are not. So bump that up to 100%, right? And just going through and making changes to this state. And imagine, imagine if you did not create this as a new state and you would have to update this every single time you want to use a dark navigation bar. Not fun. Now I'm gonna dive in here as well. I'm gonna change this to white. The red here could potentially work, so I'm gonna keep that. Now this one, we have a few options. We can either go dark. Now we probably don't wanna do that. Maybe I'll just go a little bit lighter, possibly. We can experiment with that, right? I want it nice and subtle. All right, so let me go ahead and get rid of this background. So no, we now have, actually I won't. We have our default state and we have our dark state, right? So if I do swap over to this artboard here, because I edited the main component of this particular component, right? Or the main state, or the main component, right? I now have my default state and I can switch over to my dark state. That looks a little bit better, doesn't it? And of course, because it was built into that main component, if I do need to make changes to just the dark state, I can do that. So Umacorn says, would not have thought of using a new state for that. Yeah, so if you are working with various styles, light mode, dark mode, pink mode, for example, I would definitely build them into various states. It just makes your life so much simpler. So if I did have to make changes, I can always go to the main component. Maybe I'll bump this up to 100% as well. My escape key doesn't work. And there we go, it made the change there. All right, so we have our navigation bar for the new dark experience created. And now we want to start building out some of the various elements on this particular page. And what I'm thinking, let me actually go ahead and name this Premium. And I'm thinking maybe over here to the left, there might be a very quick blurb about what this experience is, what the premium service offers. And then over to the right, you might be able to pick which tier. So there might be a few different months. 1 month you might pay $9.99, 3 months it might be $15.99 or something to that extent, right? And they'll show discounts and things like that. Abir is asking, how do you change guide colors? So in XD you cannot. So I have some guides over here. At the moment, I believe I covered this in the last stream, you can't change guide colors at the moment. They're always going to be blue. It would be a nice idea to have different colored guides. So definitely upvote that on adobeXD.uservoice.com. Probably not a very large priority item at the moment. The team's working on some pretty cool stuff, but yeah, that probably falls a little bit lower, but I would like to see that at some point in the future. All right, so what we're gonna do here, we're gonna start by creating a nice large box that's gonna show some of this information. So with the good old rectangle tool, I'm gonna drag one out. Let's go somewhere, I don't know, maybe about here. And I do want to round out the corners, because we've been using a lot of rounded corners. So drag this inwards. Let's go for 32 pixels. Looks pretty good, I think. I would go either 32 or even drop it down to 24. 24 doesn't look too bad. Now, for this particular box, what I'm gonna do is, because it's poking out from the bottom a little bit and it's on the white background, we want a little bit of contrast there. Even though the majority of it is on this dark background, we still want to make sure that we don't lose it if we turn off that border, for example, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a border, a very subtle border. We don't want to go too crazy with this border. We can do 1 pixel, 2 pixels, we'll see. But what I definitely want to do is add a very subtle shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on a shadow down here at the bottom right-hand corner of the Properties Inspector, and you all hear me talk about shadows all the time. I have a good feeling that whenever I start talking about shadows, you're all rolling your eyes. Here he goes again with the shadows. It's one of my pet peeves, because often I see a lot of people do this. Boop, 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 and they call it a day, right? Because one of the reasons we add shadows to things, in addition to, we just like adding shadows, is we want to separate shapes or objects from whatever's behind it. And, this, I suppose, it does it. And a lot of newer designers think that they need a really harsh shadow in order to accomplish that. Typically you don't, right? So what I tend to do is, let's bring this back down, is bump up the Y value. So you're pushing that shadow away from the shape, so it's going down. So a positive Y value will move it down from the shape. And of course, if you want to push it to the left or to the right, you would adjust the X value, but I don't want that in that case. And you'll also want to bump up the blur. So right now it's at 6, just bump it up, right? Don't be afraid to blur it, because you can always experiment and tweak the opacity of that shadow to get that effect again, right? Less shadow is more. I agree, Reverb Mike. So you're gonna notice that even now with that, it's about 15% for the opacity of the shadow, 26 for the blur, it's still accomplishing that. We still have that separation. And if you also add a little bit of a subtle border like I've done here, you still get that. Now, if you wanna get a little bit fancy, you can also add a little bit of color to your shadows. So I'm gonna add a bit of blue. Just a subtle, very subtle, right? If you take a look here, it's so subtle. You probably can't even notice the difference on this video, but it's subtle and it pleases me. That's all that matters, right? Chris is saying, any good XYB formula recommendations for shadow? Does it depend? It absolutely does depend. I would say absolutely. So it depends on the size of your shape. Smaller shapes, you might need less of a shadow, less of a Y value, less of a blur. I do know that Apple does have a formula. It's like, I think it's the blur value is double the Y value or something to that extent. I don't know if, I can almost guarantee you that that's not consistent. So it depends. It depends on what's behind it. It depends what's possibly in front of it or on top of it. There's a lot that goes into this. So it depends. What I might also want to do is, this background right now is a pure white. It's not bad, it probably could work, but I might want to just drop this just ever so slightly. Again, very subtle. This is what we do as designers. In many cases, in many senses, we're a little bit obsessive, right, with things. That change from pure white to slightly gray, it's such a subtle change, but sometimes it makes a huge difference, right? And you can also do the same thing with this box if you wanted to as well. If you make it a little bit darker, it interacts with the stuff in the background as well, right? So play around with it, have fun with it. All right, so we've got our box looking okay. I would maybe even blur this a little bit more. Let's try 32, right? Possibly. And we can tweak some of these angles as well. Maybe, possibly, I don't know, we'll see. Of course, we can always go back and make some changes to this. But what we're gonna do now is, inside of this box, we may want to display some information about what this service is. So I'm gonna start by, I do wanna grab that logo, but at least I wanna grab the light version of this logo. Pop it over here. And underneath, I might want to call it something. So whatever the service is called. So let's just type out premium. Now that typeface, definitely not gonna work in this situation. So let's try Proxima Nova. Maybe I will set it to all caps, and let's go for a nice extra bold or even possibly black. Possibly. Extra bold. Let's try that. Premium. And what would it be called? Premium, I don't know. We'll just call it service for now. It's not very exciting, but we're gonna call it service. And then this I might want to drop to, let's say, light. Something like that. And I can also drop the opacity as well, just to really emphasize that premium part of it. I think thin might be way too, yeah, thin is probably too thin. And I'm gonna drop the size so that it lines up. Just like that. All right, so we've got this section looking interesting. Not loving it, but it might work. And now down below, we might want to put some of the benefits of what this particular service is. Tim says, Proxima Nova, the font where you want to include the W everywhere. Does it? You know what? I haven't. I don't know, it just looks like a W. Unless Tim is using a different Proxima Nova, it looks like a standard W. All right, so what I'm thinking is we might want, almost like a checklist of all the different things the user is going to get with the service. So I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, shortcut key E, and drag one out. Yeah, okay, we'll see what that looks like. I'm going to sample our red color that we've been using. Of course, if you do have it in your assets, which I do not have, I should probably do that, right? I should probably do that. There we go. And then on the inside of this, we may want a simple check mark. Now, one thing we can do is if we hop into the plugins panel down at the bottom, we can go to our icons for design plugin, and I'm gonna just type out check. Now, of course, a check mark's not very difficult to create. Hey, Seth, great to see you. But I'm lazy, so I'm gonna grab a check mark and pop it into place. And change the color to white. There we go. Seth was just posting in Discord about able to solve the radio button problem. Oh yes, so maybe at some point during a masterclass, I will cover that as well, using components and nested components to create radio buttons. But I don't think we'll be able to get to that today. All right, so there's a check mark. Looks pretty good, simple, but great. I'm gonna go ahead and group these. And if I want to, I can also turn them into a component. There we go. Ah, Tim says that was Railway. I believe I do have Railway, don't I? Railway. Ooh, look at that. That's fancy. That is a fancy typeface. Is there another weight? No. Okay. Fancy. All right, so we've got our check mark, and over to the right, we might want to add in some text as to what this particular benefit is. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my text tool, click, and we'll just type out over 923 series. It looks like I do have Railway selected because I was experimenting with it. It's interesting, there's definitely some fun nuances of this text, of this typeface, as you can see with these letters, or these numbers. That's what they're called. But I'm gonna go back to Proxima Nova, if I can spell correctly, and I'm going to bring this down in size quite a bit, and bold might be too much. I'm gonna drop it down to, let's try semi-bold. And another thing you hear me say all the darn time is that whenever you're designing very zoomed in, like I'm doing right now, and I do it all the time, just go ahead and hit that play button at the top, just so you can see what things are looking like at a normal size. Let's actually drop this down to regular, possibly. And by the way, Command or Control Enter or Return will launch your preview as well. It might be a little bit too large still. Let's try 24. I don't know. Let's try 28. I go back and forth all the time. I'll bounce back and forth between regular and semi-bold, large text, small text. I think this is fine. It will do, pig. It'll do. All right, so we have one of these looking pretty good. Now we may want additional ones going down this particular container. So there's a few ways we can do this. We can either use repeat grid or we can use a stack. There are benefits to both, right? In this case, I'm thinking I may want to use a stack only because the content inside of it's not going to change drastically. I'm not going to need to drag and drop images or text files, but I do want the ability to rearrange some of these as needed. So I'm going to grab both of these objects. I held down my shift key and I clicked, and I'm going to pop them into a group. I'm going to call this benefit. Then I want to put this benefit group into a larger group. So Command and Control G one more time, and we'll call this benefits, plural. And then over within the Properties Inspector, I'm going to turn on a stack. Now, because there is only one group or layer inside of this stack, it automatically defaulted to a horizontal stack, which I don't want at this moment, right? Because if I dive in here and duplicate, it's going to pop one over to the right. So I'll want to make sure that I switch it over to vertical. Now, of course, if you did have multiple objects in this group, XD would define it as whatever direction those layers are going, horizontal or vertical. So now I can dive in and duplicate, Command and Control D, boop. There we go. All right, so I need another benefit. Maybe in the chat, you can throw in some benefits of this particular service. New books added weekly, right? I can duplicate one more time, and let's say exclusive merch for March? No, not March. Merch. Well, for members. And then we'll do one more while you guys are catching up on the stream and letting me know some benefits of this particular service. Let's see, full colored images or full colored pages possibly. Oh, no ads. That's a good idea, Tim. Thank you. 0 advertisements. All right. So we've got a few benefits. Now, one thing you're probably noticing is that they're a little bit squished together. And very similar to repeat grids, you can actually adjust the spacing of everything inside of the stack. So as I'm hovering over, I can adjust the spacing on an individual level. Or what I can do is I can hold down my shift key on my keyboard and adjust all at once. So I can do, let's say, 24 pixels. You can also do that in your Properties Inspector over here to the right. We'll give you a free plant. I mean, okay, we'll run with that. Hey, if it's a nice plant, I would sign up. Free plant included. There we go, just for Mike. Okay, so we've got a bunch of our benefits for this particular service. And then of course, any marketing page needs a call to action. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw out a button. So holding down selecting my rectangle tool, shortcut key R, view, drag one out, just like this. Beautiful, look at that button. Looks great. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and round out the corners ever so slightly. Let's try 16 pixels. That could potentially work. I may bring that back to 8, but we will see. Of course, because it's a smaller button, smaller shape than this one in the background, the amount of pixels you need to, have less pixels, right? Of the corner radius. I don't know what I'm saying. All right, let me go ahead and grab my eyedropper, sample this color. Again, you can grab your asset from your libraries right over there. And inside of this, we're gonna type out, let's say, become a member. And I'm gonna change the color to white. I do wanna make this nice and bold. I would consider possibly extra bold. Maybe, it could work. There we go. Maybe I'll make this a little bit thicker. Perfect. I'm also gonna turn this into a component, Command and Control K, or you can do that in your Properties Inspector, just so that if I do use this particular area or button throughout multiple artboards, I'll be able to make some changes. All right, let's just do some cleaning up here, just to make sure that things breathe. And I'm thinking This is looking pretty good. All right. So now that this area is done, I'm going to go ahead and select all these sections, pop them into a group, and I'll just call this benefits card. And if I need to, I can always jump in here. This will be called button, and this will be called header. Keeping things organized. Latoya is saying, make me a member. That's also good. I would definitely encourage you to have fun with your call to actions, as long as the point comes across. So like, make me a member could be fun, right? Become a member. It's a little bit more on the boring side, but it's straight to the point. But definitely have fun with it if your service or website is kind of going in that direction. Of course, if you are building a website for vaccinations, for example, you probably don't want to get too fun with it. You want, button is not centered. Is it not centered? Let's see, 55. It's like 1 pixel off. Boop. Oh, other way, wrong way. Boop. There we go. Now it's centered. And just in case anyone was wondering, if you hold down your command key or control key on Windows, you can use your arrow keys, up, down, left, right, to resize. So if I press up, it'll resize up, left, right, right. There we go. All right. So that's looking pretty good. Now over to the right, we may want to display the various tiers for this particular service. So again, 1 month, 3 months, 9 months, 12 months, so on and so forth. I'm going to grab the rectangle one more time and drag one out across the artboard. Now in this situation, I probably want to keep the style and the border radius pretty consistent. So if I dive into this group, and you can hold down your command key and click to go directly into a group, component, mask, so on and so forth, I can copy this shape. And then with this new one selected, right click and paste appearance. Boop. There we go. Beautiful. All right, let me make this a little bit longer. Now in this particular shape, what I'm thinking is we're gonna have a few elements. We're gonna have maybe the amount of months, how much you save by subscribing for that tier, how much it is, and then maybe some sort of visual. So what could be kind of cool is we've got this card that we built out the last time. Let's go ahead and copy this, which it is a component, so I could just drag one out from the asset panel or the assets as well. We changed the asset panel to the libraries panel a few months ago, and I still get tripped up on that. It's the assets within your libraries panel. That's what it is. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and paste it here. And I can kind of have this popping off the corner here. And this will be our 1 month subscription. So this is probably the lowest tier, right? So let's go ahead and start adding some content. Grab my text tool and I'll just start typing out, whoops, I can't see anything. Let's make this nice and dark. We'll do 1 month and maybe extra bold could work. We definitely want people to pay attention to this area. There we go. Put that around here. I might end up making this a little bit larger, but we'll see. And then over to the right, we may want how much this particular month costs. So now because I'm moving this over to the right-hand side of the shape, I do want to right align this text layer. That way, as I'm typing or as I'm changing this text layer, it's gonna automatically push to the left. So this could be $9.99 per month. Now in this particular case, I may only really want to focus on the $9.99. So I can go in here, select just the /month, and just drop this to potentially regular. I can even possibly go down to light. Maybe, we'll see. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. Let's try 32, position it over to the right-hand side. All right, and then underneath 1 month, what I'm thinking is we might want a little bit of a call out as to how much you're gonna be saving by subscribing to this particular month, right? Looking over questions, looking good, all right. So I'm gonna grab my rectangle, drag one out just like this. And for this little area, I might wanna round out the corners completely. I'm gonna set the fill to a pure black, but so that it doesn't stand out completely, I'm gonna just drop it to about 15%. So it's a nice dark gray or a light gray. Now the benefit of using the opacity slider in this particular area is that, once we might get to a point where the background changes to maybe red, or there might be a border or something to that effect, right? So, we want this particular shape to look good on a light background and a dark background. So if I were to change this shape to, let's say, our red, right? It still kind of works. We'll have to tweak the text, but that shape still works. And then we'll go ahead and type out save $0. Wah, wah. And let's go ahead and try, I don't know, should we try bold? Semi-bold? I'm gonna go ahead and left align this one. Even though I want it in the center of the shape, the reason I'm left aligning it is so that once we add padding in just a moment, it'll be able to push that background over to the right. So we can kind of keep it locked on the left side of this 1 month text layer. Misayu is asking, just wondering, how do you prepare the materials and getting the ideas before executing? I believe that designers are busy with all prep before pouring the actual design. It's an interesting question. Mostly I don't design for clients. I do these masterclasses, daily creative challenges. A lot of my inspiration and ideas comes from things like Behance and Dribbble, right? I'm on there all day just looking for ideas. And also the community, people in chat and on Twitter and Instagram, they're always messaging me and tweeting me, can you do a masterclass on a comic book website? Things like that. So a lot of it comes from the community. All right, so I have this save section. Ooh, that's a little bit too large. And again, this is the benefit of previewing and seeing what things look like. It's way too big. So I'm gonna drop this down quite a bit. Drop this down, let's try 16. That's a little bit better. Not perfect. I think 1 month is probably too big too. So we're using over here 32 pixels. Let's try to be consistent. Drop that down. All right. Again, this is a lot of design, just kind of going back and forth between different text sizes and colors and things like that. I don't want to waste too much time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group both of these elements. I'm going to call this save. And over to the right in the properties inspector, I'm going to turn on padding. And it's going to automatically define the padding based on the background shape or group or mask or Boolean object, and then the shapes above it, right? And if you need to, you can always change it here. There we go. Now that that's saved and I have this text layer that's left aligned, if I do change this to, let's say, save $99 or whatever it might be, that background's going to automatically adjust, which is wonderful. All right, let's see. Let's move this over. Let's make sure this is lined up. It is. Now, there's a lot of space. Things are kind of, it's just floating all over the place. So what we might want to do is just bring this on in just to, yeah, see, maybe I'll make this. I don't know. What do you all think? I'm feeling that it's probably not working. I don't know. Maybe I'll also change this background. Maybe a little darker, a little more gray in there. Change the border a touch. Light border, dark border. Just add a little bit of a bevel. But we have this space here that I'm not completely loving. I don't know. What do you all think? I think I might make this bigger. Let's try 40. And this one, we don't necessarily, I mean, we can definitely break from the style a little bit. So this one over here to the right can be 32. This one could be 40 because it's, I don't know. Maybe move this over a touch. All right, we're gonna run with it. Of course, as we continue to evolve this thing, as we add more of these, it's gonna probably make a bit more sense. Now, one more thing I might wanna add is a hover effect. Now, Islam's saying the white space is large. It might be, but we'll see. We're gonna continue. We're gonna see, I'm thinking this is also a little bit too big. Let's drop this to 12, might be too small. Actually, it's not too bad. Okay. We shall see. But in general, it feels a little bit empty, but we're gonna run with it. So I've got this one card looking pretty good, but I also want a bit of a hover effect. Now, one thing I try to do is not build the hover effects with all the content. So if I were to grab all of this information here, right, all this stuff, and create a hover effect with it, I'm gonna have to change it potentially on all the instances. So I don't wanna do that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select this shape here, I'm gonna duplicate it. This will be called hover. There we go, hover. And I can make some changes. So I could maybe darken this a little bit, or I can lighten it up a little bit. Maybe I can add a border. So let's go actually to our assets, right click and apply as border. We'll make it a little bit thicker, right? My escape key is getting stuck all the time. All right, so we've got that, and now we want to turn this into a component. So I'm gonna press the plus button over to the right, like we've done many times during this stream. Press it one more time and create a new hover state. Now, for the default state, I actually don't want it to be seen. So I'm gonna just grab the opacity slider and drag it on in. And then for the hover state, increase it to 100%. There we go. So Brett is saying the card, I think, needs to fill more of the space under it. Oh yeah, so there definitely will be more cards going down. So there'll be the various months. But yeah, something still feels a little bit off, but we're gonna see. So we've got our default state and our hover state, and of course, if you press play, you can now hover, right? And there's a little bit of a delay because auto animate is on by default. So in this case, you probably don't want that. You definitely don't need auto animate for this case. So I'm gonna change it to transition with no animation so that it just hovers very quickly. All right, so we've got one of these looking pretty good. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to select all of these elements here and pop them into a, I pressed H again, pop them into a group, and I'm gonna call this month, or this could be 1 month, just like that. Sydney's asking, can you make this in Illustrator? You absolutely can. All right, so I've got that into a group, and what I wanna do, I want a few more. Again, you can create a repeat grid with this, or you can create a stack. So Ruben is saying if you change the text color on hover, you need to change the text on all instances. Do you know a workaround? So that's exactly what I'm getting at. This is the workaround, right? In my hover component, which is right here, I only included that one shape so that I don't have to include all the text layers. So I don't have to update them on all states and instances, right? That's something the team is aware of. It's a challenge on the engineering side, but they want to improve that. It's called horizontal syncing behind the scenes, but they want to improve that. But for now, if you have a separate shape as your hover effect, it should work fine. All right, so what we're gonna do now, move this over a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to select this one. I'm gonna pop this into a group. I'm gonna call this months. And now, just like we did with the benefits over to the left, we can turn on a stack. Define it as vertical, and I'm gonna dive in here, duplicate 1 month, like that. I'm gonna call this, whoops, wrong one. 2 months. All right. Duplicate it again, and I'll duplicate a few more, just like that, right? And then we'll just change these, or maybe this will be, let's say 3 months, and then 6 months, and maybe 12 months. All right, so now we're obviously noticing some additional issues, right? They're kind of floating off the artboard. There's a lot going on here. So one thing we can do is we can adjust the spacing. If my escape key wants to cooperate, we can adjust the spacing on an individual level. We can make this page a little bit bigger, which we're probably gonna have to do anyway. Drag it on down, just like that. And also I'm thinking, we probably don't need these boxes to be so large. We can probably slim them down a little bit. And this is probably where components on a larger scale would have come into play. But I'm actually gonna go through, let me delete these for a second. Let me just bring this in a touch. What am I doing? Oh, wrong one. bring this in a little bit. Just so we don't have it too chunky. There we go. Move this over. Again, we do have that issue with the white space. There's just too much of it. Let's try 40 for this side. All right. Why am I not using a repeat grid? You absolutely can. You can certainly use a repeat grid. So if I were to grab this repeat grid, now there is a shadow, so we kind of push things around a little bit. But you can do that. But let's go ahead and keep using a stack. Actually, there was padding. That's why I kind of pushed it outwards. All right, and there we go. That's looking a little bit better. Now, of course, the border is a little bit off from this one over here, right? So that, you know, in that case, I might want to go back to my original style. It's all about consistency. And sometimes you break consistency and then it comes back to bite you in the end, right? All right, so that's looking okay. Again, it's not perfect. There are definitely things I might want to change about this, but it's getting there. So what I can do now is I can dive in here and start making changes. So this will be 3 months. And it might be, let's say, so instead of $9.99 a month, it might be $8.99 a month. So it's a bit cheaper. This one will be 6 months. And we'll do, I don't know, $7.99 a month, and then 12 months. This might drop to, let's go $5.99 a month, right? Hey, Kyle T. Webster is in the house. Great to see you, Kyle. All right, so we can also dive in here and make some changes to this particular area. So maybe you're saving, math is not my good thing. So you're saving on a monthly, well, obviously it's $1, but over 12 months, you might be saving, if it's $1 a month, $12. That's what it is. And you're noticing the benefit of using padding there, right? That background automatically changed. Now this doesn't, to me, this doesn't seem like good marketing. That's why you need to hire marketers to actually think these things through before you get in the hands of a designer, because this doesn't really make sense, right? But we're gonna run with $13, and I think this was $15, right? We'll run with it, we'll see what happens. Now, one more thing we might want to do before we wrap things up. If I do go ahead and press play, you're noticing we've got our hover effects, right? And I did change the size of that hover. I think it was by mistake, but it's kind of working, right? It's kind of fun. I don't know, we'll run with it. But of course we can dive into our main component, which is, it's around somewhere, right? There it is. We can always make this a bit smaller if we wanted to, but we're gonna run with it. But we may also want to design out what the tap or click states look like. And this is where a larger component and nested components can come into play. So what I want to do is I have this entire group of months selected. Whoops. There we go. Wow, my mouse is all over the place. Hold on. Let me organize some of this because something's going on. Collapse that. There we go. Aha. You escaped from your group. Perfect, okay. So we've got this entire group of months selected. I'm gonna turn this whole thing into a component by pressing the plus button right at the top. And now what I can do is I can go through and add various states for, you know, if you select 1 month or 3 months or 6 or 12 months, right? So I'm gonna press plus, I'm just gonna do 1, and we'll do 2, 3, and 4. Basically 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Just like that. And then what I want to do is on each of these states, I'm going to dive in and make changes to the container and also some of the text. So for the container, I'm going to select the red color we've been using. And the text, I definitely want to change it to white. Just like that. And you can kind of see the benefit of using that decreased opacity of that particular background container, right? And just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to select this container, copy it, so I can paste the appearance on the other ones. So I can go to 2, paste the, whoops, wrong one. Paste the appearance, select the text layers, change it to white, go to state number 3, paste the appearance, and as you start getting used to some of these workflows, your speed that you're designing at is just going to go so quickly. if my escape key, well, I gotta fix my escape key. I put a new keycap on it and sometimes it just doesn't want to work. All right, there we go. So we've got our default state, which nothing is selected. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now what we can do, we can hop into prototype mode and wire this up. So hopping into prototype mode right here at the top, I'm gonna go ahead and select the 1 month group, click on the handle. I wanna make sure that a tap trigger is selected, not hover. We don't need any sort of fancy animation, so I'm gonna simply select the first group or the first state. Transition, no animation. Wonderful. And we're gonna go to this group here. Number 2, number 3, and number 4. Now, if you want to, what you can also do is on the individual states, you can do the exact same thing. 2, 3, and 4. Now, I know some of you are going to be asking, let me actually go back to our default state from here, is you might be asking, why don't you just build these tap states and interactions into the individual components, or in this case they're groups, but imagine if they were components. Why don't you just build it into that? And that's because in this particular case, we don't want users selecting multiple months. So if each one of these had an individual tap states where the background is red, right? They'd be able to launch this preview and make this one red, and this one red. It really wouldn't make sense. So by putting them all into a larger component and building out the states individually, like I'm doing here, it basically prevents that from happening. So users can only tap on one or another, right? So I'm gonna dive in here. I'm not gonna do all of these, but I'll just do 1, 3, and then 4, and then this one will go back to default state. All right. Why doesn't time trigger work in a component state? That's a very large question, which I'll get to in just a moment. So now if I press play, I can not only hover over these particular areas, which again, I broke the hover state, I made it a little bit too large, but I can also tap, right? Now you're noticing something. Because I have that hover state as a solid fill, it's affecting this, right? So I can very quickly dive in here, find that hover state, edit main component, and on the hover state, I'm gonna simply just drop this to 0. I'm not sure how much smaller I made it, but let's try that. And now, that's better. Look at that. Fancy. Not perfect, but definitely a little bit better. All right, so to address Bao's question, if I mispronounced the name, I apologize. Why don't time triggers work on component states? So that's something the team wants to get to. It's a very large project. Time triggers can be tricky because, for example, you can do a time trigger from one artboard to another. But what would happen if you have a time trigger plus also some additional triggers that you want to tap on or whatever it might be, right? There's a lot that has to go on behind the scenes on the engineering side to make that happen. It's a pretty big project. That being said, prototyping is a pretty big focus for us. So you're going to see a lot coming out in the next few months, next year, something like that, that build upon components and states. That's all I can say right now, but the team is very much wanting to add time triggers to individual objects like components and states. So stay tuned for that. I don't know when exactly that will happen, but I do know it's on the top of our minds. All right. Again, I'm not completely loving how things are looking here, but once we have kind of the base of our design, then we can really start making small tweaks, like for this little guy over here. Just making a little tiny tweak until it looks pretty decent. Sydney is eating lunch. See you later. Thanks for hanging out. All right. Steven's saying, so would this program be a mix of design and coding? So XD is definitely more on the design side, but you can export as you can grab CSS in your design specs. You can grab, if I hop in here, SVG code. Of course, you can share it with stakeholders from share mode for user testing and things like that. So there's a lot in that area you can do, but it doesn't pump out HTML or full-blown websites. There are plugins that help you do that, but it's more on the design side at the moment. All right. Looks like we're just about out of time. Let me go ahead and play this one more time, right? We've got our hover effects. We can tap, 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 tap. And there we go. All right. So that is going to wrap it up for me for today's Adobe XD Masterclass. Big thank you to everyone who has tuned in. Stick around. Kyle T. Webster is coming up in just a few minutes. Thank you to Kara and Umacorn, Cody, Sydney, Steven, Brett, Seth, Bao. Who else do we got in here? Reverb Mike, Ruben, Chris, Cody, great to see all of you. I will be back in just a few hours with the XD Daily Creative Challenge and, of course, another masterclass next week. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you later.